The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestones of Windsor Castle, as Catherine, Princess of Wales, stood before her bedroom mirror, her hands trembling slightly as she fastened her pearl earrings. The weight of the day ahead pressed heavily on her shoulders. Today would mark one of the most challenging moments in her royal journey, a day that would test not only her composure, but her very soul. Prince William sat on the edge of their bed, his usually steady hands struggling with his tie. The silence between them spoke volumes about the gravity of what lay ahead. They had faced many public duties together over the years, but nothing quite like this. The nation was watching, waiting to see how their future king and queen would navigate through one of the darkest chapters in recent British history. The previous evening, news had broken that would shake the very foundations of the monarchy. A tragic accident involving a family of 5 had captured the hearts of millions across the United Kingdom. The Thornton family from Manchester had been returning home from a charity event when their car was struck by a lorry on the motorway. Parents David and Sarah, along with their 3 young children, aged 6, 9, and 12, had all perished in the crash. What made this tragedy particularly poignant was the family's deep connection to one of the charities that William and Catherine championed. David Thornton had been a volunteer firefighter who had saved countless lives during the recent floods in northern England. Sarah had dedicated her life to helping homeless families find shelter and hope. Their children had been active in school fundraising efforts, organizing bake sales and sponsored walks to support various causes. The story had spread across social media like wildfire. Photos of the family's charitable work, their bright smiles, and their unwavering dedication to helping others had moved the nation to tears. Vigils had been organized in Manchester, London, and dozens of other cities. Flowers, teddy bears, and handwritten notes had been piling up outside the Thornton family home for days. Palace officials had debated whether the royal couple should make a public appearance. Some advisors worried about the emotional toll it might take, while others argued that the nation needed to see their future monarchs share in their grief. In the end, William and Catherine had made the decision themselves. They would attend the memorial service being held at Manchester Cathedral. As their motorcade wound through the streets of Manchester that morning, Catherine watched through tinted windows as thousands of people lined the roads. Many held flowers, others carried photographs of the Thornton family. Children clutched teddy bears, their young faces etched with confusion about why such terrible things could happen to good people. The couple had visited Manchester many times before, always to celebrate achievements or mark joyous occasions. This time felt different. The usual excitement and cheering crowds had been replaced by a somber silence that seemed to envelope the entire city. Even the typically bustling shops and cafes had lowered their shutters in respect, their windows adorned with memorial ribbons and flowers. Upon arriving at the cathedral, William and Catherine were greeted by the Archbishop of Manchester and local officials. The normally grand entrance felt subdued, with only a small gathering of dignitaries and family representatives. The couple had specifically requested that the focus remain on the Thornton family rather than the royal visit. Inside the cathedral, nearly 2,000 people had gathered. The Thornton family's extended relatives sat in the front rows, their faces bearing the unmistakable marks of devastating loss. Behind them, firefighters in dress uniform sat alongside teachers from the children's school, volunteers from Sarah's homeless shelter, and neighbors who had become like family to the Thorntons. As William and Catherine took their seats, a hush fell over the congregation. The service began with a choir of local school children singing Amazing Grace, their young voices carrying a purity that seemed to touch every heart in the building. Many in the audience began to weep openly, the reality of the loss hitting them anew. The first speaker was David's fire station captain, who spoke about a man who had risked his life countless times to save others. He shared stories of David's bravery during the recent floods, how he had worked for 36 hours straight to rescue families trapped in their homes. His voice broke as he described finding David's helmet in the station locker, still bearing traces of soot from his final call. Sarah's closest friend from the homeless shelter took the podium next. Through tears, she painted a picture of a woman who had opened her heart and home to those society had forgotten. She told of Christmas mornings when Sarah would cook dinner for 50 homeless individuals, of cold winter nights when she would patrol the streets with blankets and hot soup, of the many lives she had touched with her boundless compassion. The most heart-wrenching moment came when the head teacher from the children's school spoke about Emma, James, and little Lucy Thornton. She shared their dreams and aspirations, their kindness to classmates, and their infectious laughter that had brightened every day at school. She spoke of Emma's ambition to become a doctor, James's talent for making everyone smile, and 6-year-old Lucy's habit of sharing her lunch with any child who had forgotten theirs. As these tributes unfolded, something extraordinary began to happen in the cathedral. The formal boundaries that usually existed during such occasions seemed to dissolve. Strangers reached for each other's hands, offering comfort to anyone who needed it. The collective grief was so palpable that it seemed to unite everyone present in their shared humanity. William and Catherine sat listening, their own emotions clearly visible on their faces. Catherine's eyes glistened with tears that she tried desperately to contain, while William's jaw tensed with the effort of maintaining his composure. They had attended many solemn occasions as part of their royal duties, but this felt deeply personal, as if they were mourning members of their own family. The turning point came during the reading of a letter that 12-year-old Emma Thornton had written to her class about kindness. Her teacher read her words aloud. "I think being kind is the most important thing anyone can be. When you're kind, you make the world a little bit brighter for everyone. Even small acts of kindness can change someone's whole day. My mom and dad taught me that we should always try to help others, even when it's hard, because that's what makes us truly human." The simplicity and wisdom of a child's words about kindness in the face of such tragedy proved too much for many in the congregation. The sound of muffled sobs filled the ancient cathedral, creating a chorus of shared grief that seemed to rise to the very heavens. It was at this moment that Catherine could no longer contain her emotions. A single tear rolled down her cheek, followed by another. She reached into her purse for a tissue, her hands shaking slightly with the effort of trying to maintain royal protocol while honoring her very human response to such profound loss. William, seeing his wife struggle, did something that would later be remembered as one of the most genuine and touching moments in modern royal history. Without hesitation, without consideration for cameras or protocol, he gently placed his arm around Catherine's shoulders and drew her closer to him. The gesture was simple, natural, and utterly human. In that moment, they were not the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, not future monarchs bound by centuries of tradition and protocol. They were simply a husband and wife, sharing in the nation's grief, offering each other the comfort that such devastating loss demands. The congregation watched this moment unfold with a mixture of surprise and deep appreciation. Here were their future king and queen, showing the same vulnerability, the same capacity for heartbreak that every person in that cathedral was feeling. The formal distance that had always existed between the monarchy and the people seemed to disappear in that single, tender gesture. The photograph captured everything in a single frame. William's protective arm around Catherine, her head slightly tilted toward his shoulder, both of their faces reflecting the raw emotion that everyone in the cathedral was feeling. The image, taken by a pool photographer present for the memorial service, would soon travel around the world, but its impact would be felt most powerfully right there in Manchester. As the service continued, the royal couple remained in their embrace, offering each other silent support while honoring the memory of the Thornton family. Their presence had already meant so much to the grieving community, but this moment of genuine emotion elevated their visit from a royal duty to something far more meaningful. The Archbishop of Manchester, who had been watching the congregation throughout the service, later said he had never witnessed such a powerful connection between the royal family and the people. The usual formality that characterized such occasions had been replaced by something authentic and deeply moving. Even the most hardened reporters present found themselves wiping away tears. When the service concluded with a final hymn, "How Great Thou Art," the entire congregation rose as one. The sound of 2,000 voices singing together filled every corner of the cathedral, creating a moment of unity that transcended all social boundaries. William and Catherine sang along, their voices joining the powerful chorus that seemed to lift everyone's spirits despite the overwhelming sadness. After the service, The royal couple had been scheduled to meet briefly with the Thornton family's relatives before departing. However, what happened next had not been planned by any palace official or protocol advisor. As they made their way toward the family members, Catherine noticed David Thornton's elderly mother sitting alone in a wheelchair, seemingly overwhelmed by the enormity of the day. Without hesitation, Catherine broke away from the formal receiving line and approached the elderly woman. She knelt down beside the wheelchair, taking the woman's frail hands in her own. The conversation between them was private, but witnesses later described seeing the older woman's face transform from grief to something resembling peace as Catherine spoke to her. Margaret Thornton, David's mother, later shared what the princess had said to her. She told me that she was a mother too, and that she couldn't imagine the pain I was feeling. She said that David's legacy of helping others would continue to inspire people for generations to come. But what touched me most was when she said that she would make sure her own children knew about David's courage and kindness. This spontaneous act of compassion was followed by another unexpected moment. William, seeing his wife's interaction with Mrs. Thornton, approached Sarah's parents, who had been standing nearby in stunned silence. John and Mary Fletcher had lost not only their daughter but their 3 beloved grandchildren in one devastating moment. The weight of their grief was almost unbearable to witness. William spent several minutes speaking quietly with them, listening as they shared memories of their daughter's dedication to helping others. John Fletcher, a retired teacher, told the prince about Sarah's childhood dream of making the world better for everyone she met. Mary Fletcher, through her tears, described how proud they had been of their daughter's charitable work and how the grandchildren had inherited her giving spirit. The prince didn't just offer condolences, John Fletcher recalled later. He asked questions about Sarah, about the children, about their personalities and dreams. He wanted to know who they really were as people, not just acknowledge their loss. These unscripted moments of genuine human connection were being witnessed by everyone present, and word of what was happening began to spread beyond the cathedral walls. Social media posts from attendees described the royal couple's authentic compassion, their willingness to abandon protocol in favor of simple human kindness. The planned departure time had long since passed, but neither William nor Catherine seemed concerned about their schedule. They moved through the gathering of family members and community representatives, spending time with each person who wanted to share a memory or express their grief. Their security detail and palace staff waited patiently, understanding that something extraordinary was unfolding. One of the most poignant interactions occurred when Catherine met 7-year-old Sophie Miller, a classmate of little Lucy Thornton. Sophie had been clutching a drawing she had made for Lucy, unsure what to do with it now that her friend was gone. Catherine knelt down to Sophie's level and admired the colorful picture of 2 girls playing together under a rainbow. Lucy would have loved this drawing, Catherine told the little girl. Would you like me to make sure it gets placed with the other tributes for her? Sophie nodded solemnly and handed over her artwork, which Catherine accepted with the reverence due to a precious gift. William found himself in conversation with the entire crew from David's fire station. These tough, experienced men who had faced danger countless times were struggling with the loss of their colleague and friend. Captain Robert Hayes, who had worked alongside David for over a decade, spoke about the unique bond that exists between firefighters. We're like brothers, he told the prince. We trust each other with our lives every single day. Losing David, it's like losing a part of ourselves. William listened intently, asking about the challenges firefighters face, the support systems in place for their families, and what more could be done to help those who risk their lives for others. These conversations revealed a side of William and Catherine that the public rarely had the opportunity to witness. Away from the formal constraints of typical royal engagements, they demonstrated a genuine interest in the lives of ordinary people and a deep understanding of human suffering. As news of their extended visit spread throughout Manchester, crowds began gathering outside the cathedral. Word had traveled that the royal couple was spending far more time than planned with the bereaved families and community members. People who had not been able to attend the service came simply to be near this moment of shared grief and healing. By the time William and Catherine finally emerged from the cathedral, nearly an hour later than scheduled, Thousands of people had gathered in the surrounding streets. The atmosphere was unlike anything typically seen at royal visits. There was no excited cheering or flag waving. Instead, the crowd maintained a respectful silence, many holding flowers or photographs of the Thornton family. The couple had not planned to meet with the gathered crowd, but seeing the sea of faces, all bearing expressions of grief and hope, they made another spontaneous decision. They began walking among the people, accepting flowers, sharing brief conversations, and offering comfort to anyone who needed it. Maria Santos, a homeless woman who had been helped by Sarah Thornton's shelter, managed to approach Catherine. Through broken English, she tried to express what Sarah had meant to her. Catherine listened patiently, taking Maria's hands and speaking slowly and clearly to ensure she understood the royal's words of comfort. "Sarah sounds like an angel," Catherine told her, "and I know she would want you to keep believing that better days are coming." The interaction lasted only a few minutes, but Maria later said it was one of the most meaningful conversations of her life. Similar scenes played out dozens of times as the couple moved through the crowd. A veteran who had been struggling with depression spoke with William about the support he had received from David during a particularly difficult period. A young mother, whose family had been housed by Sarah's organization, tearfully thanked Catherine for coming to honor their memory. These interactions were being captured by photographers and reporters, but the images and stories being shared showed something remarkable. This was not a choreographed royal visit with predetermined stops and scripted encounters. This was genuine human connection in its purest form, unfolding organically as two people shared in the collective grief of a community. The impact of these extended interactions began to ripple outward almost immediately. Social media posts from attendees described feeling genuinely heard and comforted by the royal couple. Local news outlets reported on the unprecedented nature of the visit, emphasizing how William and Catherine had abandoned their schedule to spend meaningful time with those who were hurting. As the afternoon wore on and the couple finally prepared to leave Manchester, it was clear that something significant had occurred. The formal boundaries between the monarchy and the people had been temporarily dissolved, replaced by simple human compassion and shared grief. The image of William's comforting embrace of Catherine had become symbolic of something larger. A royal family that was not afraid to show their humanity when their nation needed it most. Within hours of William and Catherine's departure from Manchester, the photograph of their embrace during the memorial service had begun circulating across social media platforms worldwide. The image, initially shared by British news outlets, was soon being retweeted, shared, and discussed by millions of people from every corner of the globe. The response was unlike anything royal watchers had seen in decades. Comments poured in from people of all backgrounds, ages, and nationalities, all expressing the same sentiment. This was what genuine leadership looked like. The photograph had captured something authentic and deeply human that resonated far beyond the borders of the United Kingdom. "I never considered myself a royalist," wrote Jennifer Phillips, a teacher from Liverpool. "But seeing the princess cry alongside us, seeing the prince comfort her the way any husband would comfort his wife, it made me realize they truly understand what it means to serve their people." Ascadden stated. Social media analyst Sarah Chen noted the unprecedented nature of the response. Usually, royal photographs generate discussion about fashion choices or protocol. This image generated conversations about empathy, grief, and what it means to be human. The engagement metrics were extraordinary. But more importantly, the tone of the commentary was overwhelmingly positive across all demographic groups. British newspapers, which had often been critical of various aspects of the royal family, found themselves struggling to maintain their usual skeptical tone. The Daily Telegraph's royal correspondent wrote, "In 30 years of covering the monarchy, I have never witnessed such an authentic display of shared humanity. This was not performance. This was genuine emotion shared between future sovereigns and their people." Even international media outlets, typically focused on their own national affairs, dedicated significant coverage to the story. CNN's European correspondent reported, "The British royal family has long been criticized for being out of touch with ordinary people. Today's events in Manchester suggest that criticism may need to be reconsidered. The photograph's impact extended far beyond media coverage. Mental health professionals noted a surge in people reaching out for support, inspired by seeing public figures openly display emotion and vulnerability. Dr. Rachel Morrison, a grief counselor from Birmingham, reported receiving dozens of calls from people who said the royal couple's display of emotion had given them permission to confront their own suppressed grief. There's something powerful about seeing people in positions of authority show vulnerability, Dr. Morrison explained. For many people, the princess's tears and the prince's protective response normalized the very human need for comfort during times of overwhelming sadness. The Thornton family's relatives found themselves at the center of an outpouring of support that continued for weeks after the memorial service. Margaret Thornton, David's elderly mother, received thousands of letters and cards from people around the world who had been moved by the story of her son's heroism and the royal couple's compassion toward her. "I never expected anything like this," she said during a television interview 2 weeks later. "David always said that kindness creates more kindness, and seeing how people have responded to his story proves he was right. The princess and prince didn't have to spend time with our family, but they did. And now thousands of strangers are showing us the same kindness." The memorial service's impact rippled through the charitable organizations that the Thornton family had supported. Donations to homeless shelters across the UK increased by over 400% in the weeks following the service. Volunteer applications at fire departments nationwide saw a dramatic spike, with many applicants specifically citing David Thornton's story as their inspiration. The homeless shelter where Sarah Thornton had worked reported being overwhelmed with offers of help. "We've had everyone, from corporate executives to teenagers, offering to volunteer," said shelter director Michael Roberts. "People keep saying they were inspired by Sarah's example and by how the royal couple honored her memory." Children's charities also experienced an unprecedented wave of support. The school where the Thornton children had been students organized a kindness campaign that spread to schools across the country. Students began organizing fundraising events, volunteering at local charities, and performing acts of kindness in memory of Emma, James, and Lucy Thornton. 10-year-old Amy Richardson from Leeds wrote in a letter to her local newspaper, "I saw the princess crying because she was sad about the children who died. My mom explained that even princesses feel sad sometimes, and that's okay. I decided to do something kind every day, like Emma, James, and Lucy did." The long-term impact of that day in Manchester became clear as the months passed. Palace officials noticed a significant change in how the public responded to William and Catherine's subsequent appearances. The formal distance that had traditionally characterized royal visits had been replaced by something warmer and more personal. People began approaching them differently, observed royal correspondent James Whittaker. There was less deference and more genuine connection. The couple had shown their humanity, and the public responded by treating them as real people rather than untouchable figures. This shift had profound implications for the future of the British monarchy. Constitutional expert Professor Elizabeth Hartwell noted that the Manchester visit represented a pivotal moment in the evolution of royal public relations. "The monarchy has always derived its legitimacy from the consent of the people," she explained. "What we saw in Manchester was the establishment of a new kind of consent, one based not on tradition or birthright, but on genuine human connection." The photograph of William's embrace of Catherine was eventually selected by Time magazine as one of the most influential images of the year. The accompanying article noted, "In an age of increasing political division and social fragmentation, this image reminded the world that leadership is ultimately about our capacity to share in each other's humanity." William and Catherine themselves were forever changed by the experience. Friends close to the couple noted that they seemed more confident in their public roles, more willing to show genuine emotion during official engagements, and more committed to using their platform to highlight the stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. "I think Manchester taught them that people don't want perfect royal figures who never show emotion," observed a longtime palace insider who requested anonymity. "They want authentic leaders who understand what it means to be human." That day, showed them they could be both royal and real. The annual remembrance service for the Thornton family became a significant event in Manchester's calendar, with William and Catherine returning each year to honor their memory. These visits, no longer bound by strict protocol, became opportunities for genuine community engagement and shared reflection on the values that bind society together. 5 years after that pivotal day, as William and Catherine prepared for their eventual roles as king and queen, many royal observers pointed to the Manchester memorial service as the moment when they truly came into their own as future monarchs. They had learned that authentic leadership requires not just duty and service, but the courage to show vulnerability and the wisdom to recognize that shared humanity is the strongest foundation for any relationship between leaders and those they serve. The legacy of that single photograph, a husband comforting his wife in a moment of shared grief, continued to resonate. It served as a reminder that the most powerful royal gestures are often the simplest ones, and that true leadership lies not in appearing perfect, but in being genuinely human when humanity is what people need most. The Thornton family's story, amplified by William and Catherine's authentic response to their tragedy, became a catalyst for countless acts of kindness and service across the United Kingdom and beyond. In death, David, Sarah, Emma, James, and Lucy Thornton had achieved something remarkable. They had helped show a future king and queen how to truly serve their people, and in doing so, had made their nation a little bit kinder, a little bit more connected, and a little bit more human. The moment when a nation wept had become the moment when a nation healed, and at the center of that healing was the simple, powerful image of two people offering each other comfort in the face of unimaginable loss. It was a gesture that would be remembered long after formal protocols were forgotten, a reminder that the most profound royal moments happen not when crowns are worn, but when hearts are opened.